Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this narration of the web series The Nature of Predators. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 105. Memory Transcription Subject, Governor Tava of the Vendel Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 9th, 2136. Negotiations with the Duraton homogeneity were ongoing, though the last 3 days all ended the same. The moment Ambassador and Noah brought up lending their auxiliary support ships to humanity, the galaxy's other sapient avians balked. The Durtian were recognizable for their curved bills, which stuck out like Pinocchio's nose, according to my beloved human. They didn't take kindly to the UN suggestion that those bills likely evolved to spear prey. The Durtian also told me that the Vendel presence on the call was unnecessary, and shut me out of today's meeting. I would have rather been with Noah at the governor's mansion now, but I trusted him to take care of himself. I simply knew that if the talks fell through, the Terran ambassador would lump all of the blame on his shoulders. The United Nations needed to turn one of the military alliance's only voters. Their constituency contained most of the Federation's powerhouses. Earth can't fully commit to the offensive action until we have the resources to support such maneuvers. Zal would never run the risk of his homeworld being counterattacked. Visiting the rescues hospital offered a way to pass a few hours. It distracted me from my inability to get the endangered Tafki to send a representative, or to get the Durtian to anything but chit-chat. Were all of these diplomatic efforts wasting the Terran's time? There were only so many times humanity would extend a hand in friendship and have it slapped away. At this point, it was for practical reasons that they tried it all. Glym had stabilized and was busy drafting talking points for Noah. The human ambassador had another unenviable task on his plate. We planned to reveal the Gaian's true identity to all the saved Vendel tonight. There would be mass panic once it was apparent that the masked bipeds were predators. This was a trial run for our larger ambitions, and with other races rescued from Shazar's sector. I'd taken it upon myself to monitor Hazy, who'd remained an emotional wreck despite the Gaians leaving her alone. My concern for Sarah also lingered. The female human had been absent from the facility ever since Glym snapped at her to leave. But now I spotted the curly-haired scientist taking aggressive strides down the hall and carrying a massive stack of papers. Her binocular eyes were frantic. "Slow down, take a breath." I rushed out of the security room and grabbed Sarah's forearm. "You're back here. What are you doing?" The Terran waved her postcard-sized papers. "I went to the Venlo Museum of History, photographed every nook and cranny, and annotated the human exhibit with sticky notes. Thought it might cheer Hasey up to see her old passion." "That was very kind of you, but Sarah, I know how much you love to work with others. Hasey isn't one of your projects, okay? You're not responsible for her recovery. I just want to help. I know she would be too scared to visit with human visitors. What about you? You're scared to visit her because you know that she'll look at you like you're a monster. Tava, you won't talk me out of bringing this to her. I'll drop it off and leave, but I must be sure that it gets to her. After terrifying a Vendel who's been traumatized after death, the least I can do is to give her something that makes her happy. The whole terror aspect is not your fault. Yet I feel like it is. I'm giving this to Hasey. Then I will go with you. Sarah, please, just keep back and let me do the talking. I'm not trying to silence you, but you won't hear a word you say." The Predator took a shaky breath and nodded in agreement. I pried away a chunk of the photos, lightening the load she carried. It was a sincere gesture on Sarah's part to recall Hasey's request to visit the museum. However, with what we knew now, it was for the best that the Gaians hadn't allowed the rescues to roam free. Hasey wasn't thrilled about the Terran's invasion of Vendel Prime. Little had taken her dispirited state of mind. Perhaps seeing exhibits that existed before her captivity would offer comfort. It was a slice of something familiar, which had once fascinated her. I remembered her eagerness to seek grants from me when I'd been our planetary ambassador. "Hasey might learn to love our exhibits in time. Maybe she'll appreciate humanity's nuance and complexity," Sarah assured herself. My ear flicked was non-committal. "We'll see. Let's go together." I thought that it would be best to discard the photos of the human corridor, since it may evoke negative reaction. Hasey seemed like the type to see her museum as defiled, or to see an objective look at the Terrans as a biased undoing of her pure evil work. There was no polite way to tell a friend not to showcase her species, though. My advice was to demonstrate humanity's good side to Hasey. It's possible Noah passed my message along. I should have been more careful with my words. Sarah fitted a mask over her face and extended her wrist in my direction. Catching on, I wrapped my prosthetic tail around her arm. The Terran astronaut complained that their metal replacements didn't offer the soft, bushy comfort of my natural appendage. It was the sentiment that counted to the predators. I was grateful that they didn't treat me differently for my disfigurement. My paw wrapped around Hasey's door handle, and I pushed my way inside. Sarah stood behind me, all but hiding behind my shorter figure. The predator's pulse had quickened beneath my metal tail, which its touch sensors picked up on. The Venal rescue receded into her pillow, freezing at the giant's appearance. I think Hasey hoped Sarah had departed for good. "Hi, Hasey," the Terran scientist said softly. "I'm sorry for bothering you now, and I'm sorry for my poorly thought-out exposure therapy. I'm not trying to scare you." Hasey didn't reply, but I could see her teeth chittering in her jaw. My tail uncoiled from Sarah's arm, and I gave her an encouraging ear flick. The human approached with cautious steps, clasped her photos with tentative fingers. I set the pictures that I'd removed from the stack on the mattress, and the scientist placed the rest on top of those ones. I gave Sarah a pointed look, reminding her that I should handle the conversation. "Hasey, Sarah did something very nice for you. She knows that you love the Museum of History, so she photographed the entire building for you. You can see everything that's there now, just like it was in the old days." I don't want anything from a human," the Venal coughed. "Now come on. I know that you want to see the museum, and you don't want to be around human visitors to do it. It's up to you whether you want to look at the photos. But now, you can." "Manipulation, stop!" "Nobody's doing anything with ill intent towards you. We just want to help you. See, we're leaving now." I reaffixed my tail to Sarah's delicate wrist and backed out of the room with her in tow. Hasey pulled the covers over her face, waiting for the giant to recede from sight. My heart felt heavy as we retreated into the hallway. The human slumped his shoulders, and I recognized that pouting posture from Noah. It would be harsh to tell the predator my honest opinion, but I thought Hasey was a lost cause. There was no way of making progress with someone who refused to listen. The historian was entrenched in her opinions, as much as my next words would sting. I couldn't go on seeing a friend subject herself to pain. There was nothing any human could do to win certain rescues over. "Sarah, I think that you should stop visiting Hasey. Nothing good is coming of you seeing her, and it's obvious that she hates humans," I stated in a firm voice. "There's no changing what's been done. I can find another rescue to reassign you." "I don't want another rescue," Sarah stomped her foot in frustration, pitch climbing frenetically. "I want my friend that I played Jenga with and hugged before she went to sleep. I lied to her, I hurt her, and she can't even look at me." "You don't want another rescue? It doesn't have to be a Venal then. Listen, you could meet a new and exciting species, the ones that the Mezics are facilitating. A scientist like you could brainstorm strategies to rebuild the Thafki's population, or perhaps be the bigger person, and that aids the Crocattle. It is ironic that we saved the species that led the extermination fleet from the cattle farms. It sure is funny. You know there'll be a shortage of Terran volunteers. Your help will be quite needed, and..." Emergency raid sirens resounded through the hospital, a tone that every Venal knew far too well. Sarah seemed familiar with the warning, and her eyes stretched wide in alarm. Panic swelled in my heart as I reached for my holopad. Dozens of messages from General Cam lit my feed. I should have been keeping an eye on my notifications. "Inbound signatures of indiscernible make, heading for Vendel Prime. Our new defenses should thwart them with ease, but there's a possibility a few missiles slipping through," Cam wrote in his first message. "We don't have the ship garrison we once had, despite humans standing at the helm. All civilians should be sent to bunkers." Sarah leaned her masked head over my shoulder and stared straight at the holopad. Humans were wonderful at focusing on what was in front of them. Still, I couldn't imagine having their narrow field of vision. Using binocular vision goggles at the very Museum of History tour Sarah had photographed, I had felt blind. The world had been a claustrophobic mess, and every person snuck up on me. The scientist used the visual translator to parse the text meaning and recoiled at once. The once illegible Vendel script now imparted its grey meaning. I hoped Sarah could keep her wits, because I was losing my own.
We've got to go, I stammered. There's no telling how many ships are coming, and it's probably the Arcs. Did this betray us? Sarah, let's go.
The human drew a shaky breath. I'm not leaving without Hasey.
Every second we're here, our risk of being caught in a stampede or bombed.
Sarah wasn't listening to my response. Her legs were dashing in the opposite direction of the exits. My ears could pick up another Gaian scrambling to retrieve their rescues. Even in my fear-stricken state, I recognized that bringing the former cattle to a bunker would be a problem. They'd see human refugees unmasked, and there wouldn't be a chance for the plan reveal. There were going to be panicked trauma victims locked in an enclosed space with predators. This was a worst-case scenario. I hoped the Gaian volunteers offered explanations now, before the truth became evident. It was difficult to collect my thoughts, but I was cogent enough not to leave Sarah to her own devices. I managed to chase after her, retracing the path to Hasey's room. The human was collecting the photo stack off the bed and stuffed the images underneath her arm haphazardly. Without hesitation, Sarah reached for Hasey. That elicited an ear-piercing shriek from the Venlo, who thrashed around in panic. I had enough sense to fetch a mild sedative and hand it to Sarah. There was no chance the historian would cooperate with the predator carrying her. The scientist jammed the needle into her vein and scooped the forcibly relaxed Hasey up. I wrapped my tail around Sarah's leg, just in case I lost control. The last thing I needed was to get separated from her and get swept up in a stampede. The human muttered reassurances and jogged in the direction of the exit. "Where is your car, Tava?" the Terran barked. I studied my reflection in a mask.
The driver should be waiting at the pickup area. If he didn't panic, I'm not sorry. I usually have control of my instincts, but hawks or raids are traumatic for me.
I know that, Governor. You're doing great, okay? I've got you both. The Predator's warm stability coaxed me along into the outdoors. UN security personnel who lurked in my vicinity ever since the Memorial Stampede greeted us, and they had just been rushing into the building, determined to evacuate me after I kept them waiting. Sarah allowed them to assist with carrying Hasey, and I let the humans herd me to my car. The Terrans roughly pushed my head down, and since the back door was already open, I dropped into a passenger seat and tried to steady my breathing. Bendel Prime was under attack by unknown assailant. We had to reach a bunker at once. I also needed to establish communications with my people in order to make relevant decisions. The UN security guards dove in after shoving Sarah and Hasey inside. I huddled against the human scientists and shot a concerned glance at the rescue. This was not going to be a pleasant experience once we were all caged inside a bunker. That was assuming that the three of us could get to safety unharmed.
"How close is the nearest bunker?" I asked the driver.
The Vendel flicked his ears. "For 5 minutes, ma'am. I'll do my best to avoid pedestrians." I cast my gaze out the windows. Sarah removed her mask. Given that the security staff weren't obscured from the occasion, it was selfless of the human to return for Hasey. I hoped that Noah and Glum were able to get to safety as well. The Terran ambassador could hunker down in the mansion's bunker at least. Glum's fate was reliant on the other caretakers getting him out. My frightened brain pondered the reason for our attack. Until we learned more about our assailants and the confrontation had played out, there was no determining why Vendel Prime was under siege. If anyone could protect the civilian populace, it was our closest allies. Humanity wasn't going to let our homeworld suffer easily. All we could do, stuck on the ground amidst a major metropolis, was fast-track a route to a shelter. End of chapter. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons, Dragzoon W.R.E, Quantum Wednesday, Ambrose Cattell, Lord Ashrakal, Bushmaster 177, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.